Hey guys, it's time for another Bad Mikey video. I love to tell him, you all love to side-eye me when I do. I'm just kidding, but have you ever used someone to get back at someone else? Many of us have done this, don't lie. I'm gonna tell you my story. Give me a like while the intro plays. You know you done it too, don't lie. I told you this was gonna be tough, but Alrighty, how to begin this story. This is gonna be a doozy. I have to start off by saying that this was during the stage in my life to where, like, if you batted your eyes at me, it's like, oh, we were in love and I was gonna plan the next 70 years of our lives together. Like, that's the mode that I was in. So I go out to the club one night and I meet this guy, Bradley. He's hanging out with his friend, Steven. So Bradley, good looking dude, we strike up a conversation. We end up going back to his place and hooking up. So again, the next morning I'm like, okay, so shall we set the wedding date? I love you. And he's like, I loved you yesterday, no longer today. No, I'm kidding. But I have to admit, he was kind of a little bit of a douche about things, to where I remember saying, hey, do you want to like exchange numbers? And he's like, yeah, like that's not gonna happen. Like he made it clear that I was a notch on his belt, and you know, I was in my feels. I will be honest with you, thinking, because I thought we could have had something, that we could have worked on having something, but yeah, he kind of just let me know, no, it was what it was, you know. And I can't think of the exact words, but it was like where I was like, dang, you know, whatever. So fast forward multiple months later, I go out to the same club bar and I see Steven, Bradley's friend, right? So Steven, you know, I thought he was cool that night that we met, and so we strike up a conversation. We're both like leaning on the bar, just having a drink. And Steven goes, what do you think about that bartender? So I look over and I see this dude, and it's like, oh my God. Now, dude, he was fine. Like, he was a fine ass bartender. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I have been trying to pick this dude up for months. He's like, but he just will not give anyone the time of day. Because you can see everyone kind of throwing their shot at him, and he's just like, no. So, but he's super friendly, super good bartender. So eventually he comes up to where we're at, gets his new drinks. The three of us are just having this little quick chat. And there was something about the way that he was looking at me, though, that something that was rare for me, especially at that time, was I had the thought, like, is he vibing on me? No, Mikey, no. This is you. You know, I thought that, but no way. So the bartender, we would call him, oh gosh, I didn't think of a name for him, Peter. So Peter walks away. Steven looks at me and he's like, that dude, he's totally crushing on you. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm not imagining this? He's like, no, he is crushing on you. And I'm like, oh, wow. So next time he comes back around, Peter's like, so are you doing anything later tonight? And it was just about closing time. So I was like, no. And he's like, would you like to hang out with me? And I'm like, yeah. So he goes away, but then I look at Steven and I'm like, oh my gosh. Because I knew Steven had been crushing on him, and I was not that type of dude. So I was like, oh my gosh, I know how much you like this dude. Like, I'm just gonna tell him never mind. And he's like, you better go home with him. He's like, you do this for all of us, go home with him. And I'm like, okay, I will make a sacrifice for all of you. But I end up hanging out with Peter. We go back to his place, and 5 stars across the board. Every single part of that night was 5 stars, from him, from what we did after we left the bar, to what we did later on. Like, the entire thing was just perfect. It was a perfect night, which is why the next morning I was like, Mikey, don't do this. Tell him thank you, have a nice day. That was kind of like, I'm pumping myself up for that. And then he goes, well, I'll drive you home and let's exchange numbers and maybe we can go on a date sometime, hang out again. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Thinking like, no, just stop this from, don't do this to yourself. And so he actually called me a few times, but I didn't call him back. I was trying to like, just no, don't do this. Still, that was my favorite club slash bar, so I would go there often. The next time that I go, I do see Peter, and he's like, hey, I tried calling you a couple of times. He's like, what's the deal? And something that I'm just gonna say now, but I really was thinking at the time, he says, is it because I'm a bartender? And I said, yeah, and it was true. And I was pretty much like super like transparent and open with how I felt with him. I said, I don't have the self-esteem for this. Like, you are a good-looking dude and your uniform is to wear barely nothing and you're serving these good-looking gay dudes. Like, I cannot deal with this. I'm being honest with you. Like, I will find some way to F this up. So this is best for both of us if I'm being honest with you. And so he was like, he thought it was funny. And he's like, well, if you change your mind, by the way, I think you're awesome. And, but I understand, I appreciate you telling me this. Then, most of the time people do want to date you. And then later on, it turns out once feelings are involved, the truth comes out. So I appreciate you being this direct with me or being this honest with me. So that was that, and we were super cool with each other. Every time I saw him, we would talk and it was what it was. So now, fast forward a couple of more months, I go out to that same club, and now Bradley, who I hadn't seen in forever, Bradley's there, Steven's there, and now I'm there. So the three of us, we start talking. Now Bradley had not seen the bartender before, sees him, and now he is trying to shoot his shot. He's trying to pull out all these moves, and the entire time Peter's like blocking it like Wonder Woman. He's like, this ain't happening. And of course, me and Steven are finding some satisfaction in that, just being honest. And so Peter sees me, he's like, oh, Mikey. So he runs over and he hugs me, and then Bradley's like, oh, you guys know each other? And then Peter goes, yeah. He goes, I know Mikey. He goes, I've been trying to lock that down, but he doesn't want to give me the time of day. Just in the cutest way possible, letting Bradley know that we hooked up and that I turned him down, which wasn't really true, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is when Bad Mikey makes an appearance, because again, I knew that Bradley was trying his hardest to pick up Peter, and then Peter, of course, we was doing the mild flirt thing that we kind of always did with each other, but because Bradley was there, I started to lean into the flirting, and now the mild flirting is not becoming so mild and now getting a little spicy and spicier and spicier and spicier. And then Peter's like, do you want to come home with me? And I was like, yeah. So yeah, another 5-star night happened. Drops me off in my apartment. I am in my thoughts now. I'm thinking, what did you do? It's when those mornings when you look at yourself in the mirror and you see who you really are. I remember thinking, like, why would you, Peter, such a great freaking dude in so many ways, you used him. You used him to get back at Bradley because of what happened back in the day. Like, what a crappy thing to do. Yeah, you were effed up. You should not have done that. Because again, I didn't know where Peter was gonna go with this. I was so stupid. Oh man. But yeah, that was definitely, I can say some lessons, it was hard for me to learn some things I had to do multiple times before I finally got it. That was not one. After that, I was like, I am never gonna use someone to get back at someone else, and I never have. And to be honest with y'all, I had a couple of opportunities with things that happened later on where I could have done something similar to that, but that was a lesson. I would never want it, even if Peter wasn't a great guy, didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to use anyone like that. It was just so stupid and childish and immature, like all that stuff. So a great memory to look back on now, just because I did meet this great guy and we did have a couple of great nights together, but a bad memory as far as like thinking like, you were so petty. Gosh, you were petty and just, I know I usually don't even use the word stupid, but for myself, that word keeps coming up. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, that was the lesson that I learned from using someone to get back at someone else. A like would be great, a subscribe would be even better, but most importantly, comment. I know that I'm not alone in this, and some of you out there have also used someone else to get back at someone. Come on, fess up. Tell me in the comments. Bye.